Welcome to the 10th anniversary of REIMAGINE 2021. Presented by Mousebelt. Coming up next.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to REIMAGINE 2021, the virtual blockchain conference series. I'm your co-host, Ashlie Meredith from Mousebelt, and today we're bringing you a very special edition of our series. It's our 10th anniversary event, so we have brought you community and education 10 times over the last year, and we're just so grateful that we were able to build this community and bring these conversations to you over the last year while many of us have been stuck at home. And today I'm pleased to introduce our next guest, Erik Voorhees, who's the CEO and founder of the decentralized crypto platform Shapeshift. Welcome, Erik. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ashlie. I'm doing great. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on again. So for anyone who's just tuning in, we were lucky enough to speak with Erik back for our DeFi event. So head on over to our REIMAGINE 2021 YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, check out all the awesome interviews we have there and catch up on some of the stuff Erik was talking about last year. And we'll update you all on what's happened since then. So Erik, as you know, we have a robust university program. We reach out to students at 100 universities in 24 different countries, just encouraging them to educate themselves about the space and get involved. So I always like to ask my interviewees, how did you get started in crypto, and do you have any advice for students looking to do the same?
Yeah, so I got started when it was pretty much just Bitcoin back in 2011 and just fell into it as a passion. I read about it, and once I understood the main concepts and why it was, amazing, I just got addicted. And it's one of those things that when your mind is really interested in something, you tend to learn it quickly. And for any of your listeners, they will know if they have that feeling with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. If they feel that like enthusiasm and excitement, it's a good sign. So my advice is just to learn as much as you can and try. And the best way to learn is through using it. So use Bitcoin, use DeFi protocols, learn about some of the newer exchange models and just try them out. And you'll start to uncover the various projects, who's important in the industry, which projects are doing what. And with time, you'll build relationships, go to in-person events like the conferences, and things will just happen organically if you're really passionate about it.
Absolutely. So passion, but follow that with action, right? Get out there, get your hands dirty.
Yeah, like no one's going to reach out to you and just like pull you into the crypto world. You have to walk into that world yourself. That means a lot of investment of your time into learning and into building relationships with people.
Yeah, and I think actually just trying out different products and actually using them is really helpful. Like even when, I'm trying, even us here, right? We're always learning. I'm trying to learn how to mint an NFT, and Ethereum is too expensive when I was trying it. So then I had to go look into other platforms that might work. And then I'm learning about all of these other, protocols that are out there that allow you to mint NFTs. So it's all, and it ends up being pretty fun, right? But I've heard you say in the past that you got started just writing about crypto. So, did you have a blog or how was that working?
Yeah, back in 2011, I started a blog called Money and State. And basically it was me trying to make the arguments from a philosophical and ideological and economic perspective about why Bitcoin was great money and why it was a better form of money than anything else, specifically fiat, and why over time Bitcoin would become, the world's dominant money system. And this was back at a time when almost no one had heard about Bitcoin. Those who had mostly just laughed at it and thought it was stupid. And so it was really like an appeal to other people to say, hey, like take this seriously. It's a real thing. Certainly Bitcoin has demonstrated itself to be very powerful at this point. So writing about that, I feel like it would be a little superfluous at this point. But yeah, I mean, one of the best ways to understand something is to teach it and to express it. And so writing is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I always encourage students, and students are doing this all over the world, you know, like teaching is the best way to learn something or to codify your learning. So many of them are, you know, teaching each other classes on Solidity in their blockchain clubs or whatever it is. Yeah, take all this time that you're investing in learning something and teach it to someone else, especially if you're passionate about it and you think this is the future, then you want to bring along as many people as you can. So thank you so much for that advice. Mm-hmm. Before we get into, you know, the most recent news at Shapeshift, so for anyone who, you know, follows crypto will know that you recently made some announcements about going decentralized. In October, when you came on for our DeFi event, we were talking a lot about the amazing innovations in decentralized exchanges that happened in the last 6 to 12 months. Well, now here we are another 6 to 12 months later. So what do you think the growth has been since then?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest events is that Thorchain launched. So I probably told you guys about Thorchain in October of last year, but at that point it was not live. So as excited as I was for it, one could be very skeptical that it would actually ever work. So it launched in April of this past year, April 2021, and is the only way that you can trade at scale between different chains. So native unwrapped Bitcoin into native unwrapped Ethereum, for example. So that was a huge milestone for the industry. Certainly the other DEXs that are built on Ethereum, like Uniswap, have gotten massive. They have demonstrated that they were not just a fad last summer in DeFi summer, like they've continued to show huge volumes. And there are other decentralized exchanges on other chains, you know, like Binance Smart Chain or Solana or Cosmos. So the concept of decentralized exchanges is, I think, spilling out past just the walls of Ethereum. That's probably the biggest advancement that's been made, you know, since last October.
Absolutely. And you tweeted recently that people in 2012 were worried that Bitcoin was going to be crushed by regulations, and now in 2021, people are worried that DeFi is going to get crushed by regulations. You know, why do you still hold the idea that DeFi will not be crushed like regulations?
Yeah, so crypto is absolutely in a perpetual battle with regulators because these are systems which cannot be controlled by men. They can only be controlled by code. So you have these machines which cannot be turned off. And then you have a whole industry of regulators that like to turn things off or manipulate them or change how they work. So this is a clash that's going to continue for a while. Bitcoin can't ever be turned off for reasons your audience should generally know. But fundamentally, it is decentralized. There's no person in charge of it, no company in charge of it, no organization in charge of it. Because there isn't any central party that can be manipulated or shut down or imprisoned, the system cannot be shut down. DeFi is the same model. And the complexity with DeFi is that lots of things call themselves DeFi or are referred to as DeFi, and they're not. DeFi stands for decentralized finance, and the keyword here is decentralized. So if you have a financial application that is truly decentralized, it can't be turned off, right? So like the Uniswap DEX is truly decentralized. It runs as an Ethereum smart contract. And even though the Uniswap company could be shut down, they can't even turn off the Uniswap protocol. So that's what true DeFi is. And I think it will be resilient for all the same reasons that Bitcoin is.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of, you know, the key word there in DeFi, decentralized, let's talk a bit about, you know, the big news at Shapeshift. You know, you recently spoke with Helen Braun at CoinDesk. You said that you wish there were more brave people out there instead of many just trying to make a profit about your decision to turn Shapeshift into a DAO.
Yeah, we announced this on July 14th that Shapeshift was basically going to dismantle its entire corporate structure, open source all of its software, and become a decentralized autonomous organization or or AKA a DAO. This was big news both for us because it's a wild transformation to attempt, and I think on a larger scale, it demonstrates a new way for companies to have an exit. You know, it's not just like an IPO or to be acquired, but you can actually decentralize yourself and turn into this global community that's oriented around the token of that platform. So we have just started this process. Shapeshift today is not decentralized, but we are decentralizing. And over the next 3 to 9 months, you know, every central part of the entity, the corporate entity, the bank accounts, the business contracts, the employees, like all of that corporate stuff gets dismantled. And in its place is Shapeshift as a software application that is open source and the governance of which accrues to the token holders, the Fox token in our case. So that's the idea. And we're doing this largely for competitive reasons. We think that open source, composable DeFi applications are absolutely dominating right now. And Shapeshift wants to align with that world. We're doing it for ideological reasons because the entire purpose of Bitcoin and good cryptocurrencies is that they are open, borderless, decentralized, and immutable. And if we as a company are the opposite of those things, that we are always at odds with the essence of what makes Bitcoin great. And we're also doing it for regulatory reasons. We think that regulations are going to be imposed increasingly wherever they can be. And it's not that decentralized things are immune to regulation, but we think that that's a much better ground to stand on, to be a decentralized organization rather than a centralized entity. So just from a defensive position, we believe that will be the winning strategy over the next 5 years.
Yeah, because otherwise, from a regulatory standpoint, they would, if you were more centralized, they would treat you like a bank. And with those kinds of stringent requirements, there's regulations that you don't want to have any part of.
Yeah, I mean, so when Shapeshift was an exchange up until April of this past year, when we integrated Thorchain and we're no longer an exchange, Shapeshift was treated basically like a financial institution. And so we were regulated under the normal financial institution rules and had to spy on our users against our will and all this horrible stuff. We had to do that because of our model. And by no longer being an exchange, we get out of that business and thus the regulations don't apply because we're not doing that activity anymore. So if you take that logic further, you remove all the things that you're doing that are regulated. If you can just stop doing regulated services, then by definition, you are not regulated. Now, in practice, that's very difficult to figure out where all the regulations apply. But as a principle, you can go the furthest with that if you aren't a company at all. If you remove the entire corporate structure, you remove much of the locus of where regulations apply and to whom. So that's what we are moving forward with.
Awesome. And yeah, just for people who might be just learning about crypto, you know, we just had an NFT event a couple conferences ago. So there's a lot of people flooding into the space who are excited about using blockchain applications, but maybe don't know how exactly all of this works. Maybe they have a Coinbase account. Can you explain to them the difference between using like Coinbase or Shapeshift, maybe know your customer, things like that?
Yeah, so anyone who's into cryptocurrency, whether you're new or a veteran, you have to understand a very important concept about who's controlling the keys or who has custody of the funds. In the traditional financial world, there's always a custodian of assets, right? Your bank holds your money, or a financial firm is holding your stocks. You're always holding something with someone else, a third party. In crypto, you can still do that. You can always have someone hold your funds for you. So Coinbase is holding your Bitcoin if you have a Coinbase account. But what's unique about crypto is that you can and largely should hold your own keys, hold your own assets in your own possession. What that means is that you're not trusting any other third party with your funds. So it requires a little bit of personal responsibility. You need to know some basics of how to do that responsibly, but it's not that hard. And what it gives you is complete sovereignty over your financial future. And I think that that's a very valuable thing. And hopefully, as people learn about this stuff, they will start realizing the power that is in their hands when they fully control their assets. which is something that is completely impossible in the traditional world. So Coinbase is absolutely a great company, but they are custodial, meaning they hold your funds. Shapeshift is non-custodial, meaning Shapeshift doesn't hold your funds. You plug in a wallet to Shapeshift where you're controlling your own keys, you're controlling your own funds, and that gives you the power over your assets. Shapeshift never holds them. It can never take them from you or block your account, whereas Coinbase could do those things.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. And so for people who understand Bitcoin and the power of decentralization and borderless, permissionless technologies, what's a decentralized autonomous organization, and what does becoming a DAO mean for Shapeshift? For example, you'll be going from 30% ownership in the company to 5%.
Yeah, and to be more accurate, I'll be going from 30% ownership of Shapeshift to 5% ownership of the tokens, and the company won't exist anymore. Yeah, so a DAO is a very fringe new thing. And even a year ago, I was only a little bit familiar with what these were. They're developing very fast. They're very experimental, and it's not one size fits all. Essentially, it's a way of organizing people around a project with economic incentives of a token and using the token for governance of that project instead of a traditional company. So let's say there's a website, and in a traditional company, you have shareholders. They elect a board of directors who elect a CEO who appoints everyone else at the company. All of them have formal employment relationships with that company, and the value accrual of that website ultimately goes to the shareholders. That's a traditional structure in company. In a DAO, you can still have a website, a service, but instead of shareholders, there are token holders. And instead of a CEO, there is no person in charge. So anyone can kind of propose things to the group, and you generally have on-chain voting systems where someone might say, hey, I'm an awesome marketer. Give me $100,000 and I'll do all the marketing for this website over the next year. And the DAO, the group of token holders, can vote on that proposal. Like, yes, this guy is credible, or no, I don't know who he is and I don't trust him. And a vote happens. And if the vote is successful, then $100,000 of the DAO's treasury goes out to that person and they do their work. So a lot of the best parts about corporate organization are in a DAO, but you get rid of all sorts of bureaucratic constraints, including the jurisdiction you're in, including the ease with which someone can enter the project and exit. Someone can participate an hour a month or 60 hours a week. It's up to them. And it's just a much more fluid kind of economic organization than a corporation is. So I think, it's not something where like every company in the world is going to become decentralized, but I think over the next 10 years, this is going to become seen as a new way for humans to organize around economic initiatives. And we're super glad to help pioneer that.
Absolutely. I know the whole concept is super interesting to me as a political philosopher, just, how governance works and how to incentivize good actors and de-incentivize bad actors and how people can come to consensus over things. And you can code all sorts of rules, or you can have all sorts of previous agreements going in to the DAO of like what kinds of proposals we're going to allow, who is allowed to vote, those kinds of things.
Yep.
How do you see that working for Shapeshift?
Yeah, so these are all the variables that DAOs can select differently. When it comes to Shapeshift, we use a tool called Snapshot, which takes a look at a certain Ethereum block height and says, okay, who are all the Fox token holders at that height? That is your power for voting on this specific issue. We generally are building a structure of what we call work streams, where we, instead of voting on every decision that the organization needs to make, which would obviously be impractical, you vote on someone who wants to create a work stream, like, hey, I want to be the marketing guy and I'll handle all marketing for Shapeshift. Give me this much money over this time period and I'll handle everything below me. So that person gets elected, then they can make their own decisions about who they pay and what decisions they make underneath them. And ultimately they're held accountable to the DAO. And if they don't perform, they won't be reelected or brought back in for further work. So that's the model that we're using. We have, our Discord channel where people are chatting about this stuff. We have a forum where it's more structured. And then when ideas sort of get enough support, they go into a formal proposal process where they have to specify very specific things, and that gets ultimately voted up or down over like a 7-day period once it starts. So that's kind of the basic way that this works. And Shapeshift as a DAO holds about 250 million Fox tokens. So that is where it gets its economic resources from.
And so the Fox tokens are also a governance token?
Correct. Yeah, the Fox tokens are what govern where Shapeshift will go and what we spend that 250 million tokens on.
Right. And you just did what was billed as, or you're in the middle of doing what's been billed as the largest airdrop in history. An airdrop of these Fox tokens, correct?
Yeah. So as part of our process of going from a centralized corporation to a decentralized DAO structure, part of that was that we airdropped 340 million tokens out to over 1 million people. So this was the largest airdrop in all of history in terms of the number of recipients. It was all Shapeshift customers in the past. It was the holders of tokens in other DeFi protocols that have been inspiration to us, like Thorchain, like Uniswap, like Gitcoin. And so all those people received, anywhere from 200 tokens up to a few thousand tokens based on certain criteria. And so any of your listeners should probably go check shapeshift.com and see if they're eligible for that airdrop, because it's quite a few people.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations on making that move. I know that this is like you said, ideological decision as well as a potentially competitive advantage. And I think that people who have been following Shapeshift or following your journey are really impassioned and appreciative of, this commitment to the founding principles of cryptocurrency, what was originally laid out in the Bitcoin white paper, this importance of decentralization, borderless, permissionless money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I don't think every crypto company needs to do this. Not all of them can, but a number can. And so if you're out there listening to this, you should learn about DAOs and see if that might be an interesting model for your group.
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of meeting you back in March in person. Mousebelt, for anyone who's not aware, once this goes live, we will be announcing our documentary series, Coins, on the history of money and cryptocurrency. And you flew out to San Francisco to film in the old Treasury building, the Mint, where they actually used to make money, on your birthday. Why was it so important for you to participate in that, in our documentary?
Yeah, I love documentaries. I think they're a great format for teaching things more in depth than a 2-minute article that someone might read. You guys had a lot of good speakers for that, and the production values seemed to be really good. So I was happy to participate and appreciate being invited. I think it was amazing that the whole thing was shot in the Mint. The symbolism there is fantastic. So that was really fun to see that. And I think it's a good reminder to people that money is a story that has changed throughout human history. Money has changed, how it's used is changed, the technology around it has changed, and Bitcoin is clearly like this next evolution of how money and value can work. And part of understanding it is to understand the history of the monies that came before. So yeah, I'm very appreciative that you guys are putting that all together, and frankly, I'm quite excited to watch it.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone go check out the trailer. Erik is featured in many of the episodes, so excited to be launching that soon. Just to bring a little teaser for some of the things that viewers can expect to hear from this documentary, you brought up a concept that I don't think is discussed enough outside of finance and cryptocurrency, but it's something that I've been bringing into like my day-to-day conversations with people, and we got to talk about it in the Coins documentary, which we've kind of been describing as the war, this debasement of our currency and how crypto might be the solution. Yeah, what can some viewers expect to hear about that from the show?
Yeah, so currency debasement is, in my opinion, like the largest and most long-standing scam that is perpetuated against humans around the world. I think if if every year people looked at their bank account and they saw that like 2 to 5% of the money just disappeared, right? They had $1,000 and then the next, at the end of the year, they had like, $980 or something. They would all be rightly confused and angry that that money just disappeared. But when you debase currency, that's not what happens. Instead, the money units stay the same, but they buy less. So the $1,000 will not buy $1,000 worth of stuff at the end of the year that it would at the beginning of the year. So the reason that happens is because of currency debasement, because of inflation. When the government prints money, that is the inflation of the money supply, and all else equal, the value of each unit in circulation goes down over time. The reason governments do this is because they want to spend more than they can take in taxes. And so they print some portion of what they spend. Almost no one understands that much of the government's funding is just by printing money. And when they print that money, they get to use the newly printed money before prices around the economy have risen. And by the time the money circulates around the economy, prices have risen and everyone holding dollars pays for that. So it's a very hidden, insidious form of taxation. It's not honest, it's not transparent. And most people don't really recognize that it's happening. They think the price of milk just goes up every year because of market forces. They don't realize it's because their money is being destroyed. So I think it's a horrible scam. I think over time, people will wake up to it, especially now that there is an alternative form of money that cannot be debased, which is Bitcoin. And as people get used to that, I think they will start to realize that dollars and other fiat currencies like the euro or yen are close to sinister forms of money. And it'll be looked at as like a very sick period in human history when people were subjected to that kind of theft.
Absolutely. I like that phrasing of it. It's like a different way of taxing us without us knowing that it's happening, right? But that's essentially what it is, some sort of way to extract the capital needed from the citizenry.
And it's illegal for you or I to print dollars, but the bank, any bank, prints dollars when you get a mortgage. And this is like another thing people don't realize. When you go get a mortgage or you borrow money from the bank, people have this picture that like the bank has $500,000 and they loan that to you to go buy your house. What actually happens when you borrow $500,000 from a bank is they create it on the spot at the bank in their computer. They just create $500,000 new dollars and give that to you to buy the house. And then you're paying them back $500,000 with interest. And you don't get to like print that at home and pay it back. You have to work and actually get $500,000 plus all the interest and pay that back to the bank. So it's quite an awesome arrangement for the bank to be able to have this license to print money and have to be paid back with real dollars that the borrower worked for. It's ridiculous, and very few people even know that that's the mechanisms of how a bank works.
Absolutely. So anybody who's interested in hearing more of these kinds of conversations and learning more about how money works, the history of money, and how cryptocurrency might provide a solution to some of these problems, as well as all of the tales of, the hacks, Mt. Gox, Silk Road, Ethereum. Check out Coin's documentary launching on August 19th, exclusively on YouTube, and then subsequently all other places that you can find podcasts and content. And thank you so much, Erik, for being a part of it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So just to round out the segment, we've been doing this for a little over a year, came out of this desire to continue to support our community that we had built around Mousefelt during COVID and lockdowns and being stuck inside. And through all these conversations, had the opportunity to talk to some of the brightest minds in the space, get them all together for a documentary. Maybe just some backwards looking statements like, how was the last year for you at Shapeshift? And what do you see for the future for Shapeshift or the crypto in general?
Yeah, I mean, the last year for me was really about the journey of decentralization, which sort of culminated with our announcement on July 14th. COVID, for its part, Shapeshift closed its offices back in March of 2020, as did many people. And so we became a completely remote company with about 70 employees. And I think everyone who did that was a little nervous like, will this work as well? Will we be as productive? Can we work together fully remotely? And what we found, along with many companies, is that, yeah, actually, in some ways it's more effective. In other ways, it's less effective, but on net, it's at least as good as being in an office, at least for us. So that helped us, remove one more obstacle in the idea of decentralizing the whole company. Because if we had to have an office, none of that could happen. You can't have a physical office and be a decentralized organization. So yeah, that was an interesting outcome. I think, COVID generally has thrown a bomb into people's patterns of behavior. And some people are realizing that, like, changing those patterns of behavior can actually be more effective. And so that's a silver lining that's come out of this whole crisis.
Absolutely. For 2021, what do you think some of the biggest things have been in the crypto space that you've seen, besides Shapeshift, of course, going decentralized? What are some of the biggest innovations you've seen this year?
I think the whole development in the Cosmos ecosystem is really exciting. Cosmos is a proof of work chain that is very decentralized, very fast, complete finality on transactions. And a lot of interesting projects are getting built using that ecosystem, including like Terra and Thorchain itself. Thorchain I have to mention again because I think it's one of the most important pieces of infrastructure in all of crypto's history. The ability to trade one asset for another across chains without wrapping is huge. And then certainly as we're talking, there's this whole infrastructure bill in Washington and this huge swell of organic political action on behalf of people in crypto to prevent onerous regulations from being imposed on the industry. That's certainly going to go down this year as like one of the defining moments. Whichever way this vote goes, people really showed up and demonstrated that like crypto is punching way above its weight in terms of political influence. So certainly as prices rise and you get 50 million people getting increasingly wealthy and who care passionately about this technology, that's going to be a base of political power that it's going to be increasingly meaningful.
Absolutely. I just had the chance to speak with Brock Pierce, who, as you know, ran for president last year for this event. So for anyone just tuning in, check out some of our other interviews for this special 10th anniversary edition. And we talked a lot about, with freedom, with wealth comes responsibility. And like everyone can kind of understand in crypto now, the freedom of this kind of money becomes the responsibility of like taking control of your own security, managing your own keys. And with this freedom, we live in a participatory democracy. So comes that responsibility to participate. And I'm really excited to see more and more people in crypto getting involved at the local level, at the national level, in the whatever politics in their jurisdictions are.
Yeah, it's certainly been interesting to see how much support there has been for that initiative. I mean, my personal opinion is that people don't have an obligation to participate in systems that they don't find ethically okay. Like, for example, I don't vote for president because I don't find that system to be ethically permissible. At the same time, people need to realize that government is everywhere. And there are sometimes certain issues which are just yes, no decisions on something that's either good or bad ethically. And so I don't have any problem with people taking action when they feel like ethically it's the right thing to do. But it's, crypto's gone from this little niche thing that no one cared about to an important force in the world. And it is just one stop in the trajectory of Bitcoin taking over the entire global financial system. So that's where this goes. And we're just kind of like at the halfway point.
Yes, very exciting. Looking forward to what the rest of the year holds. And again, so grateful that everyone has been tuning in for the last year, our 10th special 10th anniversary event here. And Erik, you came to join us again. So before I let you go, just let us know, how can people find you? How can people find more about Shapeshift? And who do you most want to hear from?
Yeah, shapeshift.com. Check to see if you're eligible for the airdrop, everyone, because many of you might be from actions you took years ago. I'm on Twitter all the time at Erik Voorhees, ERIK, and I'm happy to hear from anyone. For those who are listening and new to this stuff, the main message, people are always trying to think like, should I invest in this or not? Learn about it, buy a little bit of it so that your brain will be open to understanding it, and really understand how to use this stuff responsibly before you just buy something that you don't understand. So with that, I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for anyone just tuning in, this is Reimagine 2021, the virtual blockchain conference series. I'm your co-host, Ashlie Meredith, and we've been speaking with Erik Voorhees, the CEO and founder of Shapeshift. Thank you so much for joining us, Erik.
Yeah, thanks, Ashlie.
Stay tuned for more, everybody.